When you think about French history, everyone jumps to Louis XIV, the Sun King.
I am the state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that idea, that level of total, absolute power for one person, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It had to be built.
Oh, it was built brick by strategic brick by the man who served the king before him.
Cardinal Richelieu.
That's the one. He basically engineered one of the most incredible transformations in European history. He took a France that was, well, a mess, fragmented, always on the edge of civil war, surrounded by enemies.
And turned it into this unified, absolute powerhouse, the one that would dominate Europe for the next 150 years.
Yep.
So that's our mission today. We want to understand how this one advisor working for King Louis XIII, who was actually kind of shy.
And not very sure of himself politically, no.
How did he manage to centralize all that authority in France? I mean, what were his tools and what were the ruthless choices he had to make?
What's so fascinating is how unlikely it all was, his start. He was born Armand Jean du Plessis in 1585 to minor nobility.
So not a top-tier family.
Not at all. His path was pretty much set for him, a military career, which was, typical for his class. But the family had money problems, big money problems. And they needed to hold on to the income that came from the Bishopric of Lucon.
Wait, so he didn't join the church because of a divine calling? It was a business decision?
Pretty much. It was a financial transaction to save the family estate. So he drops the military plan, dives into his studies, becomes a priest super early, and by 1607, he's the Bishop of Lucon.
And right away, he gets this reputation.
A brilliant administrator, not just a spiritual leader, but someone who could solve really complex organizational problems.
And that kind of talent, well, it doesn't stay hidden in a small bishopric for long.
No way. His big break came in 1614. It was at this big national assembly, the States General.
And he gives a speech.
An incredible speech. It just showed off how smart he was politically, and it got him noticed by the Queen Mother, Marie de Medici.
And getting her attention was basically the golden ticket.
It was everything. She brings him into the royal court as an advisor, and from there, his rise is just relentless. I mean, even with all the backstabbing of court politics, he's Secretary of State within a few years.
The Pope even makes him a cardinal in 1622.
Right. And then comes the big one. 1624, King Louis XIII makes him chief minister.
And he holds that job for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
For 18 years.
18 years, defining the entire direction of France.
So, okay, he has the power.
Yeah.
What's the first thing on his to-do list? The biggest objective?
It was one thing, make the king the absolute ruler of France. To get why that was so huge, you have to picture France back then. It was still kind of feudal.
Power was all spread out.
Exactly. You had these powerful dukes and counts running their own provinces, holding their own courts, collecting their own taxes.
And basically ignoring the king whenever they felt like it.
They acted like his authority stopped at the gates of Paris. So Richelieu knew, if you want to consolidate power, you first have to physically take away theirs.
Which leads to this incredibly dramatic move.
He ordered the destruction of private castles. Any castle that wasn't, essential for defending the borders of France.
It's not just about defense. It's symbolic. You can't start a rebellion from your fortress if you don't have a fortress.
You can't. It's a massive statement that the king's power now reaches everywhere. But as you said, tearing down walls doesn't tear down their political power.
So how did he replace them? The old noble administration.
This is maybe his greatest innovation. The intendant system.
Okay, what are intendants?
Think of it like this. The old nobles were kind of like franchisees running their own shops with no oversight. Richelieu replaced them with company men, the intendants.
And these guys were different.
Totally different. They were bureaucrats, and their loyalty was only to the king. They were sent out to the provinces to oversee everything. Justice, police, finance.
And they collected taxes directly for the crown.
Crucially, they bypassed the local nobles who were often corrupt or just kept the money for themselves. They were the king's eyes and ears and his wallet out in the country.
So they could investigate, arrest, even judge cases in the king's name.
Yes, completely sidestepping the local power structures. And they were temporary jobs, so they couldn't put down roots and start their own little dynasties. Their loyalty had to stay with Paris.
Wow, that's the beginning of the modern French government right there.
It is. It's the backbone. But you can imagine how the old nobles felt about it.
Their ancient privileges were just being erased.
They were furious. But Richelieu had an even bigger internal threat to deal with. The Huguenots.
The Protestant minority. They had religious freedom, but they also had their own fortified cities and their own private armies.
And in Richelieu's mind, you just can't have that. A unified state cannot have a minority group with its own military. It's a challenge to the king's authority, a state within a state.
He saw it as a threat he had to eliminate.
So he launches this huge, brutal military campaign against them. The most famous part is the Siege of La Rochelle.
Their main port city on the Atlantic, super fortified.
And for 12 months, from 1627 to 28, the Royal Army just grinds them down. Richelieu was there himself, commanding troops, even building a giant seawall to block the English from helping.
A total royal victory.
Yeah.
But it's what he does after that's so brilliant.
Yes. This is the key. He could have tried to force them all to convert, or exiled them. That would have started a massive religious civil war.
But he didn't.
He didn't. He took away their political and military rights. No more fortified cities, no more armies. But he let them keep their religious freedom.
It showed his goal was political unity, not religious purity.
Exactly. He got what he wanted, the king's total authority, without starting another generation of religious war.
Okay, let's pivot to the world stage, because this is maybe his most controversial move, the 30 Years' War.
Europe is basically on fire, this massive, horrible conflict. And the main players are the Catholic Habsburg family.
Who rule Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, and they have France surrounded.
They do. And France is a strongly Catholic country, so everyone expects them to side with the other Catholics, with the Habsburgs.
But Richelieu does the complete opposite.
He directs Catholic France to start funding the Protestant armies who are fighting against the Catholic Habsburgs. It was shocking.
Why? Why would a cardinal risk the anger of the entire Catholic world to do that?
For one reason, a policy he called raison d'etat.
Reason of state.
It basically means the interests of your nation, in this case France, come before everything else. Before religion, before morality, before family ties.
So sharing the same religion meant nothing compared to the map. France was surrounded by the Habsburgs, so the Habsburgs had to be weakened.
That was it. The fear of encirclement was his biggest nightmare. So he was willing to pay for Protestant armies to keep the Habsburgs bogged down. It was revolutionary. He essentially secularized foreign policy, national power over religious unity.
Was there real anger about this in France?
Oh, absolutely. The Catholic hardliners were scandalized. A cardinal paying for heretics to kill Catholics. But Richelieu, with the king's backing, argued that a powerful, unified Habsburg empire on their border was the far greater threat. And well, he was right. By the end of the war, the Habsburgs were weakened, and France was the #1 power in Europe.
But all of this, the armies, the bureaucracy, the spies, it must have cost a fortune. How did he pay for it all?
The financial strain was enormous. And sadly, the burden fell almost entirely on the common people. He jacked up taxes, especially the taille, which was a land tax that mostly hit peasants.
So, great for the state, but miserable for the average person.
That's the dark side of it, for sure. It led to a lot of small, desperate peasant revolts. He did try to find new money, too. He pushed for domestic industries, an early form of mercantilism. Export more than you import.
Make your own stuff instead of buying it from other countries.
Right. And to protect all that new trade, he knew you needed a navy.
He had a great quote about that.
He did. The power of the king must be assured on the sea. He invested a ton of money in building a modern fleet, new ports. He saw the navy as essential for projecting French power and protecting the new trading companies he was setting up.
And he didn't just focus on military and economic power. He saw culture as a tool, too.
Which brings us to the Académie Française, which he founded in 1635.
The guardians of the French language.
Yeah, but for Richelieu, it was more than that. It was political. The goal was to standardize the French language, set rules for grammar, spelling, make a single official dictionary.
If you standardize the language, you standardize the nation. You create a common identity.
And you make France the center of culture and elegance for the whole world. It was all part of the same project.
But if you're the guy running all of this, making all these ruthless decisions, you're going to make a lot of enemies.
He was a feared man, and he survived conspiracy after conspiracy, assassination plots. And these weren't coming from nowhere. They were coming from the highest levels of the court.
Sometimes from the king's own brother. Even his mother, Marie de Medici, who originally helped him.
She came to resent his power. But he had an answer for that. An incredibly effective spy network. It reached everywhere. The famous example is the Cinq-Mars conspiracy in 1642.
This was a huge plot. A young favorite of the king schemes with Spain to get rid of Richelieu.
And Richelieu's spies found out everything, down to the signed treaty with Spain.
Yeah.
And he showed zero mercy. Cinq-Mars and the others were publicly executed. It sent a terrifying message to the rest of the nobility.
Treason has consequences.
Serious ones.
It's still amazing he kept Louis XIII's trust for 18 years through all that.
That was the crucial partnership. Louis was the king, but he wasn't really interested in the day-to-day grind of governing. He relied on Richelieu because Richelieu was brilliant at it. And Richelieu was always careful to make it clear that all this power was for the crown, never for himself.
He even used architecture to project that power.
Oh, yeah. He built huge projects. The Palais Cardinal was so grand that it eventually became the Palais Royal, property of the crown. He rebuilt the Sorbonne University. These were physical statements that Paris was the capital of a powerful, unified state.
He died in 1642 at just 57.
Yeah, he worked himself to death, basically. And in his will, he left his palace and all his immense wealth to the French crown. One final act of service, he also recommended his protege, Cardinal Mazarin, to take his place.
Historians often call him the first modern prime minister. He really did transform France from this collection of feuding regions into a modern centralized state.
He did. His focus on raison d'etat and his creation of that bureaucracy, they really set the stage for French dominance for the next 150 years. His life just shows that sometimes the real power isn't wearing the crown. Sometimes it's wearing a cardinal's hat.
Good luck with your studies.